Support for Kalamazoo Lively Arts is provided by the Irving S. Gilmore Foundation, helping to build and enrich the cultural life of Greater Kalamazoo.
Welcome to Kalamazoo Lively Arts, the show that takes you inside Kalamazoo's vibrant, creative community and explores the people who breathe life into the arts. I'm John Koch here at Miller Auditorium. On today's show, we stop by the Kalamazoo Valley Museum in the heart of downtown to explore how art, history, design, and play come together to create interactive learning experiences that take us on a journey through time.
All right, instead of the yellow brick road, let's follow the blue water here. What's this? What's this all about?
Glad that you noticed this.
Yeah.
So as part of the design of our history gallery, we have the Kalamazoo River that winds its way through the gallery spaces. This isn't necessarily a chronological space, so the tie-in is always, the community, the river kind of interconnects everything together. So we talk about a lot of stories, and again, they interconnect with one another. There's a lot of layers in this exhibit. There's interactions for kids, and there's also stories you'll see everywhere of individuals from the community that relate to the different topics that we bring up. So it is, you can spend, we have people that come here and then they come back and say, oh, I don't remember seeing that. And so you can come back here multiple times and get something new every time.
Much history based on pulp and circumstances, paper mill supplies and users, and of course, the water. Right?
Absolutely. I'm glad you picked up on that too, because towns develop around their natural resources, and so again, if it weren't for the water resources, we couldn't have had the pulp industry, and at the same time, the pulp industry, had some adverse effects on our water system. So, everything is related, and these are the things that we still talk about today as being big topics of conversation. So I think although everything is sort of stems from the history in this gallery, it still relates to what we're dealing with today.
And there's art to history. Look at these artifacts.
Yeah, see, I think it's so neat that, back in the 19th century, even something like a stove or a radiator, they put a lot of artistic elements in those. It was almost like a decoration in the house. So I really get a kick out of that. I love seeing old things that have an artistic flair to them.
And here we go. We can just keep on going down the river. So what's been the history? What brought this to life?
So back in 1881, a local collector, Horace Peck, had a collection of kind of natural history type things. Back in that day, that's what people were interested in, fossils and shells. It was just fascinating to people. So he got a collection together, started a little museum. The collection grew and grew. By the 1950s, it had outgrown its original spot and was part of the library downtown. Outgrew that space. The community decided it wanted to dedicate its own space to a museum. So in 1995, they started planning this building, and here we are. In 1996, this building opened up.
Give me an example of one of maybe how I'm interactive in art.
Yeah, we do a lot with music history, and we also, in those exhibits, even though they're mostly focused on the history of music, there's also interaction where people that visit here can start to experiment with their own musical talents. We talk about the history of Gibson guitar. Of course, everyone that comes to Kalamazoo wants to know something about Gibson, and we have a lot of pieces from his collection. But we also get into sort of the technology and science behind music, and how do you get these sounds, how do you make those sounds, and a lot of the people that were in Kalamazoo were experimenting with that. So it's interesting to learn how they came to do those interventions and things. So.
Ron Cleveland, I'm ready to learn the art of the guitar, and here it is at the Kalamazoo Valley Museum, right?
Yes, indeed, yes. So Kalamazoo has a long history of instrument building. The Gibson Company, for the first 80 years of its existence, was here in Kalamazoo, and they built some of the most prized stringed instruments in the world. To this day, Gibson instruments are really sought after by connoisseurs and musicians around the world.
Take me on a little tour, a little musical tour here. Yeah.
So these three instruments were built by the Gibson Guitar Company. Early on, they were the Gibson Guitar and Mandolin Company. So Orville Gibson's initial patent was for a mandolin, for a building style that hadn't been used in mandolins before. So the traditional mandolin had numerous staves, so it made that bowl back shape, that what Americans call the tater bug. And Gibson thought of a different way to build them, more like a violin, more a solid back, instead of the multiple staves, a solid back that's carved and a top that's carved and tuned more like a violin. And this was an affordable model, the Kalamazoo. This was a consumer model that
it's the Kalamazoo mandolin.
The Kalamazoo mandolin. It was a brand name. Yep. And then Gibson made a lot of different guitars, and they were very sought after. This one was a hollow body electric guitar that was lightweight, but it was also amplified. So this type of guitar could cut through a rock combo or a jazz combo and be heard easily. The banjo, which became popular in the 30s, it kind of took over. The mandolin was the instrument of choice. I mean, the mandolin was hugely popular from the 1880s to the 1920s, but that big booming sound of the banjo, it has a drum head that gives it a more clangy, louder sound. That kind of took over from the mandolin. It was used more in jazz bands because it could cut through the band, without, there wasn't amplification at that time. So that became the popular instrument back in the 30s.
What's this?
This is a lap steel, a Hawaiian lap steel. So there was a Hawaiian music craze in the early 20th century, and this was Gibson's line of lap steel guitars that was popular among people who like to play Hawaiian music.
What's it like for you as a mandolin player to experience?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's to be able to work here and get involved in this history, see this history. We have an instrument that Orville Gibson built himself, which is just, for me, it's mind-blowing to be able to get a close look at this thing and imagine the history and imagine Orville Gibson here on the streets of Kalamazoo, yeah, it turned out to be a very successful company, and it's incredible to be able to be a part of it,
We're ready to make some rhythm happen, Tom Howes. What's this all about?
So this is our rhythm machine. We get patrons in here, kids and adults, people of all ages, and they can come in and make songs and build new rhythms using various percussion instruments that you see up on the wall here. So.
And I guess the first thing to do is touch screen to begin. I touched mine. Can you touch yours?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
So that pulls up a screen that allows you to press all these different little circles here that correspond to all the different instruments. So inside of here there are computers that run cabling to all these instruments that are hooked up to little actuators with pedals and paddles and things like that, and you can build songs and new rhythms that way.
Build songs and new rhythms as part of, again, an art type exhibit. This art is music.
Exactly.
All right, let's start pushing. What do you want to? You push the first one.
Okay, let's try the tambourine
first. Okay, there you go.
And if we look up on the wall here, you can see that tambourine. Striking every 4 beats.
Okay.
We'll get the wood block going, coming in right behind it, maybe.
Where's the, okay.
That's the wood block.
There it is. It's going.
Some other noise is happening right now, but let's fill it in with some other songs.
I want the snare drum. Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, this is actually sounding like a song here. All right, let me get the high bongo in.
I'm going with the cowbell. Very cool. Can we change our tempo then?
Yeah, let's speed that up. Perfect.
And I can go salsa?
Also, yeah, these are some presets. So if you really don't know what you're doing, you can always just select a preset, do some salsa, do some rock and roll.
It gets louder as the more we bring in.
Yeah, and we can speed that up again.
Oh.
Yeah, or slow it way, way down.
Or throw it to rock.
Yeah, throw a rock and roll beat in there, which maybe it's not rock and roll everybody's familiar with, and you can always add to it. So if you don't like that rock and roll beat, you can add some more tambourine. Need electric guitar here, but we don't have that.
I'll end with a crash cymbal. And then we name the
Can you
beat
think of a good name?
and start dancing.
Yeah, exactly.
All
We do get a lot of kids in here dancing, and that's pretty fun to watch. So.
And again, all part of an exhibit that brings in the community to learn about art, music, history,
Definitely.
and more. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
All right, we'll call this Tom's song. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
What's at the heart of the Kalamazoo Valley Museum?
I think at the heart of the Kalamazoo Museum is, of course, education and learning. And so we are trying to get lifelong learners here, and we start at the youngest ages. We see tons of parents that come here again and again. Because we're free, they can, continuously use us to help their kids understand different concepts in all sorts of areas. So we've got a space dedicated to smaller kids called Children's Landscape, and this is a great space that targets kids that are under 5, and that's for all sorts of reasons. First, we want to make moms comfortable that their kids can run around without having to worry about older, bigger kids as far as safety and play. So that room is all about tactile explorations, playing, how you can learn from playing, and a lot of times those activities change and are mirrored in our other exhibits. So you can bring your little kids in right now and learn about animals, and then we've got other exhibits that explore animals for older ages. So that's a really great space, and I think those kids that come here even that young, if they grow up coming to the museum, as they grow up, they're going to be taking different things.
And here we are, Tammy, in front of and beside some pretty cool art. What's here?
Yeah, so this is our community mural, which is part of our history gallery. And what's really cool about the mural is there are people and places represented in the mural from all different time periods and people from all different walks of life. So when you look at it at first, you think, oh, this is now, and then you realize that people are dressed in some attire from different centuries. So it's really neat to take a good look at this mural. It was done by Conrad Kaufman when the museum opened back in 1996, so he started working on it that year before then, but it's been updated since then. So every so often we take a look at the mural and we add to it. We have him come back and add different things just to make sure that we're still representing our community and making sure we're current. So.
And do we also, who's next to you?
Well, this is a lady from, her newspaper says 1947. I think what's interesting about these sculptures is that, again, this exhibit was designed back in 1995, way before people were taking selfies, but it just lends itself so well. People come in here and they're doing selfies with her, selfies with the other sculptures, they're in the mural, so it's really cool that we've been able to keep up with the times like that.
Yet another tie-in of community and art. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Have a favorite?
Oh, I think the baseball player coming out of the wall is very cool. It kind of scares people at first, but it's really cool.
It's really neat. Oh, okay, I'm going to play in the sand, and you're going to help me because you are.
I'm Matt Gibson from the Kalamazoo Valley Museum, and this is our augmented reality sandbox.
Okay, so tell me what that means in like layman's terms.
So you've heard of virtual reality, right?
Yes.
Where you have the goggles on, you're taken to a whole new world.
Yes.
In augmented reality, we're in our normal reality, but we augment it or transform it using technology.
Okay. So let's play.
All right.
Okay, what's my goal here? Just to play? Just to play in the sand?
Yeah, we're creating new landscapes.
Oh, I like that better. Okay.
And do you see these rain clouds, Shelley?
Yes.
So
There's some lightning going on.
The shadow from your hand creates a storm. And what happens when it storms out?
Rains and lightnings and thunders.
Rains and lightnings and thunders. So you see the lightning, and what's happening, you can't see the rain because it's covered by clouds, but it's rolling down the hills. Do you see how these low spots are filling in with water?
Yes. So as we stack up, tell me more about the colors.
So, you'll notice how these lower spots are blue.
Yes.
Then they rise up to green, yellow, and even red at the highest spots.
Oh.
If you get it real high, you can even get white, like the snow caps on a mountain.
Mountaintop. Let's do it. Okay.
See, there's the snow.
How is that possible? How is this happening? What's the science? What's the art behind this?
So, we have this Xbox Connect reader up here that reads the landscape, and the projector projects this color on here in real time. So as you move it around, it changes instantly.
Goodness gracious. How are you strategically being inclusive and accessible?
That is one of the things that we continuously work on. We have been developing a lot of programs for targeted groups, including kids with autism and adults with autism. We do all sorts of special programming for people that are hearing impaired or vision impaired. But right now, one of the big things is the autism programming that we've been working on. So it really focuses on the tactile again. You know, what can I feel? What can I touch? How can that help me learn? And getting over the barriers that oftentimes are very difficult for children with autism when they go out into the world and they're in public spaces that can often be really loud or overwhelming. We've developed ways to get around that. So we've been working on those. We have them available, but it's one of those things that we're constantly trying to modify and update and make better. So I'm really proud of the things that we do for a lot of those target groups.
Regina, I understand we've got an artifact back behind us in these walls. The mystery of the mummy. Mummy, how old is she?
She's over 2,000 years old, yeah.
Tell me about your mummy.
Sure. We unfortunately don't know her name. That was removed from her coffin over the years. We don't really know when that happened. Could have been when grave robbers inevitably took her out of her resting place. Could have been somewhere on her travels. So we don't know her name. We do know quite a bit from her body. The reason we know her age is actually because of the process that she was mummified in. It's a little bit later time period process. They used bituminous resin, which is just a coal-based resin, instead of what we kind of see in movies and maybe at other museums where you've got all the wrappings visible. She has a molded resin on top, which is a dark color, like coal.
And as part of museum, again, back to inclusiveness and more, this has a unique aspect for a unique audience.
Yeah, so there was a partnership a few years ago with a local organization who helped bring some low vision and vision impaired and blind patrons a little bit more interaction with this exhibit. There's some relief statues that you can touch and feel, and then there's text, and that text is in Braille as well. So you're able to get the same experience and the same information.
What else do we find in here? Other artifacts?
There are other artifacts. The mummy and her coffin are the things that relate to her, but we do have other things that are ancient Egyptian, canopic jars where they would have placed people's organs after the mummification process, and then other things that would have been common to find buried with ancient Egyptian people, tokens and small statues and things that were meant to protect and help them in the afterlife.
Reconstruction, give me this history.
Yeah, so something that we were able to do here and a lot of places do to kind of bring a true face to mummified persons is facial reconstruction. So again, kind of looking back at the bones and what the body is telling us, the artists were able to put together a rendering of what our mummy would have looked like in life. And that was done back during the same time period as her original x-rays at this point, which was the 1980s. And we have that on display here, and it's kind of one of the ways that you can truly look at her face to face as if you were standing in front of her when she was living.
So I walk in the front doors. What's my map? How do I get the most of an experience here?
Wow, so it's hard to take in everything in one visit. It is possible, but when you walk in, you are immediately struck again by the architecture and what we call our core gallery.
The art, right?
The art and architecture of the space. And so immediately you will notice 3 floors of these amazing objects that are kind of highlighted by themselves. And again, as a material culture person, I love that people can look at an object and really start to ponder who made that, who used that, why is it here? And a lot of times those objects have artistic elements themselves.
talk a little bit about the job of designing your museum.
So we have an interesting job to design our museum because we are not just a history museum, we're not just a science museum, and we're not just an art museum. So it was a really tricky thing back in 1995 as they were designing this building, because we really don't want to give any of those topics, we want to show the interconnectivity of those three areas. And so as you walk around, I think you'll notice that we've done a pretty good job with that, where science is in one area, but it also is reflected in another area. We have pieces of artifacts, for example, from our collection that are in the science gallery when we talk about innovation, and the arts are kind of throughout. So I think they were very conscious of trying to do that when they designed this building. I think they did a great job. Originally I said we came to this building because we were out of space, and it's funny because even 20 years later we still struggle with having enough space. We would love to have more exhibit space. We definitely would love to have more collection storage. We are constantly growing in terms of our historic collection, and it's just, I think every museum has that problem. No matter how well they design their building, there's just never enough space.
Would you take me for a museum experience?
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Kalamazoo Lively Arts. Check out today's show and other content at WGVU.org. We leave you tonight with a performance by Kalamazoo Classical Guitar as they share the Dalton Theater stage with Kalamazoo Mandolin and Guitar Orchestra. I'm John Koch. Have a great night.
Support for Kalamazoo Lively Arts is provided by the Irving S. Gilmore Foundation, helping to build and enrich the cultural life of Greater Kalamazoo.